Thank you, sir. So, again, my name's Paul Wickstrom, and just on there. Okay, closer. All right. So, my name's Paul Wickstrom. Thank you, Sarah. So, I guess kind of what makes me a little bit qualified to do this is I'm a pilot for today's Frontier. So, this is me at during upgrade, and then this is just a map of it's kind of globbed together, but it's everywhere I've flown while working for Frontier, and that. Put it in numbers. I've been there 11 years, flown everything except for the 318, which left before I could get there. And this is over about 2,100 or 2,200 flights, just shy of that. I know a lot of news out there about Frontier and the ultra low cost world being delayed, but I can't take much credit for that because I have about a 13-minute delay on those flights. And then you can see I've transported a few people around safely. So pretty proud of that. So to a couple of things just to take note is that my time does not overlap Frontier Airlines, the original Frontier, by much. So I had to do a bunch of research to find out what I know here. So there might be some gaps in what is the truth. And but this is the best I could come up with to kind of bridge the two airlines together, because there's some neat things that kind of tie both of them together. And by the way, this is a picture of me leaving Minneapolis, which is where I live. When I had a flight, I was working back there during the daytime. I got on the internet, found a photographer that could take a picture of us departing, and so that is us leaving. We're off to, I think, Tampa that day, so to warmer places. Although it was quite nice that day for being winter. So the original Frontier started on June 1st, 1950, and it was a merger of Monarch Summit and Monarch Challenger and Arizona Airways. They came together to create it, and their first flight was from Grand Island to Omaha. And you can go back, and there's history. A little hard for me to find some of the history about those three airlines independently, but they kind of really came together with Frontier as a DC-3 operator. And they kind of grew slowly throughout the 50s. What really helped them grow was this 7 states case. It was the problem was that a lot of the trunk airlines were kind of ignoring some of the smaller cities, and at the end, the CAB decided that they should be awarded 27 new cities. And with that, they were able to grow into a lot more of what you know today. In 1959, Frontier took delivery of the Convair 340, and at this time, Denver became their largest station. And also, kind of at this time, the Boomerang, I know that's not the original livery, but the title for Boomerang to Zoo was a lot more catching than Flying F or whatever you'd refer to it as. But what's neat about this livery is that Frontier put out a contest to its employees to decide to come up with a livery, and this was the result. A mechanic had designed this, and it became quite a common livery for a while. So this is kind of with that 7 states case one that expanded the airline into kind of this is what you had in 1959. And something that I always find fascinating about a route map like this is all the little stops that you have between cities. And it's a little hard for me to imagine today what it's like to get on an airplane and make all those stops. Just it's more like a train route, but still neat. So jump to 1964 here, the first Convair 580 was introduced, and at that time, around this time, they started to convert Convair 340s and 440s. So that's those are radial piston engine airplanes and converting them to turboprops, making them into Convair 580s. So we fast forward to 1966, the first 727 was introduced, and with this came first class. A little unclear. There's not a lot available that I could find out about what Frontier offered for cabin service in this time. But what I did find from talking to former employees is that there was no first class service and coach service. It was all one. So everybody received, actual plates and glassware, which is why when you go out to the floor here, you can see still some Frontier stuff for sale today, and it's not that hard to find, which is kind of nice when you're trying to, buy stuff like I am. Could be, I don't know. Well, that would be, I mean, we're coming right up on, right into, I mean, the 727s into the 737s is when that would have been done, so, and in first class, so. It's all, it's all about weight today. You know, it's if we can save weight with the plastic bottle, that's what the name of the game is. But so October 1967, Central Airlines is the one that actually bought Frontier. They just continued with the Frontier name, and this significantly expanded the airline into Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Texas. And we'll get to a route map that kind of shows that here in a second here. But before they did that, they also took delivery of their first 727-200. And what I think is really neat about this is that same year they retired the DC-3. So you had a bit of overlap there for the summer. And just kind of neat to think that you could be flying on a DC-3 and then connect, if you were to connect through Denver, you're getting on a 727. It's just, I can't really relate to that. So I think, again, very neat. So this, we got, they're backwards here. This is the 1964 route map, and you can see where, you know, turboprops and whatnot drive the airline there versus the more introduction of the jet route or jet aircraft on the left side of 1970. And they've started to expand a lot more. Everything, a lot more going in and out of Denver, a little bit less going city to city. So 1969 comes the 737-200, and this would become the mainstay of Frontier for the rest of its existence here. And about this time, they started to sell off the 727s to Braniff that they had. And those are all gone by 1972. So next here in 1970, I again can't find out too much of where they actually went except for EAS service, but the Twin Otters were delivered, and they did start service to like Great Falls and Williston with these aircraft. So 1978 came the Sawbass livery, which is kind of pointed out last night when I ran through this, but we got another one in the background there, but another well-known airline. So it's kind of neat. About a couple years after this livery showed up, the airline offered transfer bus service too. You could specifically start to Boulder, so you could buy your ticket to Boulder, and you transfer your luggage and yourself to a bus, and you'd end up at in Boulder. And then later, in 1985, they started to specific ski resorts. So you could buy a ticket to Vail, Copper Mountain, Breckenridge, and Winter Park. And what's neat to me about this is that My Frontier did this shortly after they started up. Not sure how long it lasted, but they did operate the same thing. 1982 came along the MD-82, and at this was all in 1982. They also ended the service of the Convair 580. So that was 18 years that it was in service. It was very much the backbone of the fleet for that time. And here you can kind of see as we transition more into jet airplanes, this looks more like the Frontier route map that I know when I first started there. A lot more Denver and back, a lot less in between cities, and a little bit more longer flights, as you can see. And in 1982, the company turned a $17 million profit. And if you know the timeline here, you know that that didn't take too long to erode. 1984 came along Frontier Horizon. This was a non-union airline. They started with service to DCA, San Francisco, O'Hare, and LaGuardia. And as a result, the unions all started picketing outside of the headquarters to show their displeasure of obviously of a non-union carrier. All came to an end in 1986. On August 24th, they ceased operations. Shortly after that, they actually declared bankruptcy, and then kind of got the whole messy how it wrapped up with Texas Air buying People Express, and then Continental buying Frontier and People Express, and a lot of airlines kind of disappearing about the same time. And you know, one would think it's just done, part of history, but a couple people decided that they didn't want to let it go. And as Continental started to draw back service from Denver in 1993, they thought this is a good opportunity to start really ramping up to create the new frontier, which they did on July 5th, 1994, when they had two 737-200s, and they started with flights from Denver to Fargo, and then Grand Forks, and then Bismarck and Minot. So what I think is kind of neat about this new airline, with why animals were chosen, I cannot find that. But what I think is really neat about this is that so this is the same aircraft, but they're facing different ways, and the animals are different on each side of the airplane. This was done to take a very small airline with two airplanes initially and make them look bigger. They also did this with the 737-300s that they had. And so when I started, these were long gone, obviously. I only have flown the Airbuses there, but there were people that I worked with that started on the 737s. And specifically, flight attendants would talk about there was at least one 737-300 that was haunted. And so much to the point where the pilots knew well enough that not even to play around with, don't tease the flight attendants, do not turn the power off to that airplane until they were off. Otherwise, things would happen that they didn't like. Things apparently moved in the galley. There's too many stories about this to not be true, because it's from too many people, so it has to be true. So this is a October 1994 route map ad, I guess. This is more of an ad that I found. I have this hanging in my home, and it very much shows Mark Air is doing the heavy lifting here. Really surprised when I went back looking at the history of this. We could do a whole nother presentation on Mark Air, but they didn't get too much help from them for too much longer, because about a year later, Mark Air ceased operations. So after that one, and they're all alone, this was the route map. Everything's just out and back, pretty basic. This is what a one-year-old airline kind of looks like. A couple years later, Frontier and Western Pacific decided they were going to get into a codeshare agreement, and then they decided, let's go ahead and merge, and kind of like how the low-cost world works, especially for Frontier. If you know the latest history with Spirit, is that once they look at each other behind closed doors, they decided no more and ran away from each other. And they decided to not just end the merger, but the codeshare should end too. And shortly after this, they ended the codeshare in November of 1997, and by February of 98, Western Pacific ceased operations.
Wasn't that the cause of Western
Pacific? I do know that they were in Colorado Springs and they did move, but I'm not sure if it was related to the. I'm not sure if it was the you come up here, move into. It's like It's a good question, and it's not one that really is talked about by people I've flown with. They were more. I brought this up with them, and it was just no interest to talk. I don't know. There's some things that you don't push, and this and Midwest are the two things with employees that you don't talk about very loudly. The first Airbus showed up in 2001. It was a 319 that was delivered, and with this, I believe all the Boeings had 2 animals per tail. This now went to a single animal per tail. And with the delivery of the Airbus, a lot more longer flying and everything kind of in and out of Denver. And what's kind of funny is the stories are well documented from people I've worked with, that the FAA got kind of upset at the pilots because everything always broke in Denver. And airplanes don't just break in one place. So they would get them to an outstation here, and, well, we can limp it back home. And they're finally started saying, just write it up where it's broken. But I think notable is the Florida and New York and Washington, D.C. flying was added with the addition of the Airbus. So the addition of, I believe this is all leading up to Lynx, but they started with wanting a regional feed. So they created Frontier Jet Express, and this Mesa and Horizon operated this part of the airline, and I don't believe Mesa had any animals on their tails. They just advertised that they were Mesa. But the Horizon CRJs and the rest of the regional fleet all had baby animals on their tails, which I thought was kind of cool. The 320 was delivered in 2003. I'm sorry, the 318 was first. They came before the 320. In 2003, this also marked the end of the 737-200. That was in July. And then in a couple years later, in 2005, the 737-300 was retired. So by 2005, they were an all Airbus carrier. 2006, there was a unique kind of low-cost carrier partnership with AirTran. It was where they're going to share their reservations and their reward programs, and much like other agreements, that quickly ended. Republic came along. They started flying in 2007. They started 170 service, and this is another one that most people I flew with that were around at this time will tell you that the airline was within hours of bankruptcy, like not even Chapter 11. They were going to liquidate, they were going to be gone, and Republic stepped in and purchased them. And so from June of 2009 to December of 2013 is when Republic was, everything was run by Republic, meaning that dispatch and operations all moved to Indianapolis, and everything in Denver had closed down. The headquarters was no longer in Denver. Everything was in Indianapolis. And in 2013, they sold to Indigo after they got out of after they sold Spirit. And at that time, they ended all the regional flying, so it became a mainline only carrier. Before that happened, though, Lynx Aviation, which I believe was all of the regional flying leading up to this, they're a wholly owned airline of Frontier, and again, they had the baby animals on the tail, and they operated Q400s up until 2011. 2008, the 320 was delivered, and unlike what you'd see at most carriers, the 320 was never really a mainstay at the carrier. It was a pretty small contributing factor. They only had only 26 were delivered compared to the 53 319s. So this is just a route map of 2009, kind of showing the, can't quite see it here with the color, but you can see someone like Fargo and Rapid City and El Paso are all operated by Q400s and Lynx. In 2010, Midwest was all I can say is was absorbed into Frontier. There's very little that I can find exactly. I mean, it was going to take a while to complete it, but the airplanes never came over, and very few employees actually did. All I know is about it was the Midwest 8, and I'm not sure beyond. I never heard more than that. So if anybody knows, I'd be very curious to hear more. Very briefly, the Embraer 145 flew for the airline. That was ExpressJet in Chautauqua operated the airplane for him. And I find this kind of interesting because before Frontier, worked at ExpressJet, so there's a little bit of connection there too. In 2014, the Frontier revealed this livery, and I think what's kind of neat and often missed is the connections to the past. And two of the big things are from the DC-3s, the Arrow, and then the Saul Bass F is carried over. And this is, I like the livery a lot from day one. A lot of people think the F is an R. I don't know, but when I see the flying F from the tail, I think it's kind of neat, especially to play off the history of those two. So this is when I showed up shortly after I arrived. The first 321 was delivered, and I remember the first airplane we got to fly, the captain's like, "You want to take us to Orlando?" And I said, "Absolutely not. I'm not going to break the new airplane. You can do that. I'll watch you land it." And he went. We had a whole training program about the new airplane, and he goes so on a 320, there's two call buttons, forward and aft. And the 321 has like 5 buttons because you got forward, mid, aft, and all. And he looks up there, he's like, "Nobody told me about this. What else don't we know about?" This is delivered with 230 seats, and it's as comfortable as that sounds. So when I was a new hire, I was told by our chief pilot that you'll have your favorite animal, and I laughed at that because I'm like, this is kind of silly. Well, I did get my own favorite animal. It was Wally. He did not last too long. They took him out back and did away with him. Some are reincarnated, and Wally has not yet been. We have a different wolf, but not quite the same. 2016, the first 320 Neo showed up. This is a very, if you're familiar with Denver at all or Frontier, this is a very common view of from the bridge, the pedestrian bridge going between the terminal and Terminal A. And it's very different today. It's not only longer; it extends out to about there now, and there's one airline that Phil knows about. So 2016 is when the first 320neo showed up. These are LEAP powered, and the fleet grew to 82 airplanes. Since shrunk by about 20, as they've returned a few. 2022, the first 321neo. They decided to change the how the airplane lands, and didn't really tell us about it. So this is my least favorite of the fleet. In 2025, we took delivery of the first 320neo with the Pratt & Whitney engines, and up until last week, I had not flown it. So I've got two landings on it, and it flies normal, so I like it. This is the most recent. We don't put the lines on the map because you couldn't tell where we flew if we did. So many of these lines connect, and as you saw in the very clustered, my map kind of fills in a lot of these blanks. And the joke is with us is, how do you know where you're going? It's the look at your, like, where does Frontier fly, is look at your schedule, because it might, it changes quite frequently. So these are all pictures I've taken since I've worked there. This is just a 320 departing San Francisco, and I kind of like it with the history of other airlines that are not around. This is before a dreaded red eye leaving San Francisco. So we're just down in the ramp, and picture before we left. Kind of feel the mugginess of Orlando in this picture. And then this opposite is just a winter, kind of a rare winter day in Philly anymore. You don't see too many storms like this, but kind of made for a slow day. Want to guess? LaGuardia? This is Chinook, and he's the closest we have to Wally. And what's ironic about this picture is that this is the tail is set in a winter scene. So it's a night winter scene. So he's hauling into you can see his, Wally, you can see his breath. Here you can't see his breath, but you can see the stars. That's Cancun, and I like this one just because the Southwest tail in Cancun. At one point that was not normal to see them international, so it's kind of neat. This one's at Trenton. Unless you live there, I'm not sure too many people venture off there, except for Dan and Sarah, who rode with me to get there. I don't know where you went after that. I'll have to hear that. But I also like all of our kind of sea creatures that we've wound up on the tails over the year. They've been pretty good animals, I guess you can say, compared to some of them. Like we have an alligator. I don't want an alligator. This was a short-lived delivery with the .com on it. I think only 2 airplanes were ever painted in it, both 320s. Just getting ready to another San Francisco red-eye pre-departure. And then this picture was taken of me landing in Los Angeles. Actually, it was the FO that was landing, but Phil Brooks took the picture. No, it's all good. But what's funny is that before the door was open on the airplane, because the FO landed twice in this trip in Los Angeles, he made sure to go to the website that records your, like, the YouTube channel that has your video. He had found his landing both times before the door was open. So that's what pilots do. That's cool. I can try to answer questions about the old Frontier, but any questions, comments? There are some, I've heard there's some flight attendants that, well, I don't know if they're still there, but I've worked with flight attendants that were at the original Frontier. But that's more of they're Denver based, so now I'm Atlanta based now. I very rarely fly with, I'd have to be out west, which happens every once in a while, but it's not as common as when I was Chicago based. We'd be out in Denver quite a bit, but you have to, and then it's like there's 4 to 5 flight attendants, and being able to talk with them sometimes it means that we're delayed, for something, weather, ATC, maintenance. But so I think they still exist.
Are there any videos that you know of, or anybody else tail graphics?
I believe they're decals based on doing the walk around. It's a big decal, kind of like the advertising stuff is. Yeah, but I don't know to tails. It's kind of, you can't just throw stuff on a tail. It's especially the rudder. It's got to be balanced. But so I don't know how they do that part. But it's the part that I can see. That's definitely like a decal because they can kind of start to peel up after glycol's not kind of adhesive. So after a while, it starts to peel it back. But right now, today, there's 13 for 2,400 pilots. I would say so. Denver is actually not the biggest station anymore. Orlando and Atlanta kind of fight that out, and there's definitely connections through those two. And Denver certainly still sees a high amount of traffic, and there's still connections there, but nothing like what you saw when it was the only station. And that, I mean, for a long time, it was the only domicile. It was after Midwest, Milwaukee briefly was a domicile until they opened up Chicago, and then it was a dual, both Midway and O'Hare, and then it closed, and Midway closed first, then all of Chicago closed, and then the whole thing opened up. So Chicago's been a world war. Is there somebody stuck in our cabinet here? Thank you for coming. Appreciate it.